Anybody tell me what, when we talk in math about area, what are we talking about? And why do we need area? What is it all about? What is it good for? Anybody? Nick?
Like the space inside of the shape, or like the area of this room?
Space inside of a shape is a good way to explain it. Any others out there? Why do we need area? Maybe would be another question there. Peter?
So, like, say the length of the room times the width of the room.
That would be it. Here's an example here. If I asked you how big your house is, what would you say? Jacob Pootsendorf? Now you might say it's not very big, but that doesn't tell me, because your house, no matter how big it is, would be huge compared to like the houses that the pioneers settled in, because they had basically one room where they slept 8. I mean, one little room, probably a quarter the size of this room would be that. So you can't really use the words big, small, whatever. You know, if you're buying a house and somebody says how big it is, what do you tell them? Gary?
How many rooms it has, maybe?
Yeah, but you could have like the world's smallest rooms and say, I got 35 rooms in my house, but each one of them's only the size of the bathroom there, or whatever, and that's not going to really tell them here. What is it, Nick?
The area of it?
Yes, but how do we measure area?
The length times the width equals
Well,
area.
yeah. Area is always measured in what? Measured in, Eli?
Square feet.
Squares. Not always feet, and that's what you have to be careful with. Area is always measured in squares. And again, that's relative. Okay? For example, a square inch would be something like this. 1 inch squared. Now, rather than having to write out the whole word thing there, you can kind of abbreviate by using the little 2 above the number there. For example, a square inch you could write as inch, because that means inch, and then a square up there. A little 2 up there means a square inch. Okay? A square foot is a square that is 1 foot by 1 foot by 1 foot. That is a square foot. Yes, ma'am. I would assume set 59.
Okay, thank you.
Like that. Okay. And then as we get bigger here, you know, a square yard is 1 yard by 1 yard by 1 yard. That's a yard square. And you can keep getting bigger. When we talk about how big states are, states would be measured in square miles. And to give you an idea how big a square mile is, I don't know if you're familiar with this area here, but if you drove from Cross down to Walker Road, which is 1 mile that way, and then from there over to Emmanuel Road, which is that road that's behind us over there, that's another mile. All of that inside of that square that you'd make there would be 1 square mile. So it's all relative. Okay, that's why when you talk about area, you always have to label, because you can't just say the area of that is 5, because 5 square centimeters, you know, might only be something that looks like this. Okay, 5 square inches would be something that might look like this. 5 square feet, you know, would be something that's a little more like something like that. So you have to label, because your squares depend on what label you're using. Miss Lopez.
Are those hot dog buns on the counter?
For tonight, yes. Have they been?
No, but I'm just, the subs threw me into a dither,
Uh-oh.
so now I'm in there cleaning.
No, the hot dog buns there for tonight's thing. Then we're pretty much gonna be done. What?
Huh? Never mind. These are the good ones in here. There are some that I'm not sure I would use.
Okay.
What's the matter?
Okay.
Huh? The best one.
Now, if you see a shape, oh, by the way, listen, going back to the house thing there, what would you say, how big would a house actually be? Well, here's a good question for you. Let me ask you this question. How big is my classroom? How big is my classroom? Actually, every classroom in the upper grade hall, what would you say if I asked you how big it is? Question mark. This will give you some idea of area there. Ryan says what? Oh, you're still counting? Okay. Gary, how big is my classroom?
90 square feet.
Gary says 90 feet squared. Evan?
9 yards.
9 yards is not an area of, 9 yards would just be a line from me to that wall about. 9 yards is just, if you're talking about squares, it's squares, it's. Melissa?
5 meters.
What's that?
5 meters that way, 5 meters.
I don't know what that means. 5 one way, 5 the other way, I don't.
5.
Grace?
32 square feet.
We've got somebody going 32 feet squared. Jacob?
48 square feet.
48 square feet. By the way, when you're telling me, those of you that just said, Evan, when he said 9 yards, if you just say yards, that's a unit of straight lineage. In other words, it'd be a string that would be 9 yards long. That's not. When you're talking about area of something, you have to say something squared. That tells me 90 square feet means that I have a square foot, which is a foot by a foot by a foot, and I have 90 of them. That would take 90 of them to fill up this room here. Michael says 60 square feet. We've got a lot to learn about thing here. Nick?
Can I like 30 square feet?
Nick says 30 square feet. Now, let me give you the gist here of this here. By the way, you could easily figure this out by counting each one of those tiles on the floor is 1 square foot. Let me give you the gist of my room. My room is pretty much a square except for that little piece that juts out right there, and we're not going to worry about that. But if you were to measure my room is 30 feet this way. If you count the tiles, there's 30 of them that way. And my room is 30 feet that way. That is not 60 because if you split this up the way it should be and make it into squares, check this out. I've got, maybe I should blow this up. Let's blow this up so you can see it here. I have 30 squares going this way, so it's going to look like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, I'll get a little small, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. There are 30 blocks going this way, and there are 30, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 5, 6, 7, wait. It is 30 blocks going this way by 30 blocks going that way. How many total blocks would that be, Gary?
900
900. If you were to get on your hands and knees and don't do it, and count every one of these little gray tiles, you would count 900 if you actually did it. That is how big my room is. It is 900 feet squared. Gary, Ryan, I'm pretty sure I said not yet. Okay. If I asked you now, back to the other question there, how big is, pretty much your house? And I don't know what kind of houses you guys live in. In the last 20 years, we've gotten a little big on our house sizes, but generally speaking, anybody, how big do you suppose your house would be? Peter?
I would say about 1,000
1,200 square feet. Grace,
27.
27,000?
Well,
So it'd be 30 times the size of this room?
no. Each story is about the size.
So that would be twice this. If you have 2 stories that are each the size of this room, it'd be 1,800 square feet.
I can't.
Gary,
1,600 square feet.
1,600 square feet. Jacob,
3,000 square feet.
3,000 square feet. You're probably close to the ballpark. If you live in a house that's probably been built in the last 15 or 20 years, it's probably between 2,000 and maybe 3,000 square feet. If you live in an older house, it's probably more like, 1,600 to 1,800, because we've really, in the last 15 years, we've started building really, really big houses with lots of extra space. 30 years ago, they kind of built them not terribly big, just kind of to get by or whatever, but we kind of got. And you could tell based on, you could probably actually go home, do me a favor and go home and ask your parents how big your house is. If you live in a really big house, like you got 5 bedrooms and everybody has their own bathroom and such, you're probably in the 3,500 to 4,000 square feet. Here, let me ask you this question. Our gym, how many square feet do you think our gym is?
The school.
Now, I don't know what the school is. I kind of know what the gym is. The gym, Mason?
10,000.
You're very close. That's probably very close to right on. Our gym is about, it's like 120 feet long if you go the long way. Then the side that has the bleachers on it, it's more like 100 square feet, 100 feet that way. And if you multiply those together, what you do when you find area, that's about 12,000 square feet. Okay. You don't think about, it's tough to tell how big your house is just by thinking about it, because when we do rooms, you don't think about how big and how small they are or whatever they're. Sammy?
My house is really, really, really old, but it's pretty big.
Yeah, and then, well, yeah. If it's an old, bigger house, is it a square house? Is it like a
It's
pretty square, but it's 2 stories?
yeah.
Yeah, it's probably 900 square feet on every level. So if you got 2 levels, it's probably 1,800 square feet, which is a lot of room. See, if you've got an old house though, usually in old houses you had the kitchen and a living room, and then pretty much you got your bedrooms. But new houses, they went, not only do you have a kitchen and a living room, you've got what they call the great room, and then you've got like a rec room, and you got all these rooms that they're not places, dining room, living rooms. You don't have, in old houses, they pretty much you did maybe have a dining room and a kitchen. Sometimes they were put together as one, and then you had like a living room. So you only had 2 of those rooms, but now we build houses that have like all those different types of rooms where you don't really live in. You could be here, you could be there. Just a lot of extra space that you don't necessarily need to live. It's a little more elaborate or whatever. Ev?
Well, my house is big, but my dad says about 3 stories.
Is it 3 stories?
Including like he said, it's 3 stories.
Well, it would be if you have a basement and then upstairs and then whatever main floor there. Anyways, back to your notes under area here. First things first, when you see a problem that deals with area, guess what I'm going to tell you to do. For example, here's problem A in the book. Problem A has this being 3 centimeters and 4 centimeters. The first thing you always are going to do with these is you will always sketch out the picture. If it's an area problem, you're going to draw that rectangle for me. It doesn't have to be perfect, just needs to be good there. And secondly, write in your notes there that area equals length times width. And we don't always write out that whole word, it's just A equals L times W. And it doesn't matter when you do the math which one you call the length and the width, but when if I were to ask you on this problem here, what is the width of this square, how do you know the difference between width and length? Eli?
Long-wise, like top and bottom is length.
Yeah. The length is the longer side, and the width is the shorter side. So if the book asks you what the length is, they're talking about the long side, the 4. The short side is the width, and it's the 3. It doesn't matter when you do the math, because 3 times 4 is the same as 4 times 3, so you can mix it up. But when the book asks you specifically for one of the sides, length is longer, width is shorter, LL, length longer. So the area of this rectangle here is 3 times 4, and make sure when you do it out, you label it. It's not 12, it's not 12 centimeters, it's 12 centimeters squared. Because if you were to cut this up, and the book might ask you to cut it up into squares, this is how it would look. It's 3 centimeters this way. There's my 3 centimeters, and then it's 4 centimeters this way. And then rather than have you count every one of those squares, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, you can just multiply those two together, because that will tell you the 12 that is there. Grace?
Is it okay if we put 12 squares centimeters?
You could write this out as 12 square centimeters if you want to write it that way. I just find it simpler to do centimeters squared, square centimeters, whatever that is. I think that's probably good enough for you.